Hey there, story lovers. Welcome to Panda Tale. I'm so glad you're here to share in the magic of storytelling with us. Sit back, relax, and prepare to be transported to worlds of wonder. Your next favorite tale is just a play button away. That winter, I was gravely ill, bedridden, and barely clinging to life. Yet I was left to starve to death. My husband's heart belonged entirely to Lisa, and he wouldn't even spare me a glance. He simply ordered the servants to wrap me in a tattered mat and bury me hastily in an old, abandoned cemetery where no one ever visited. I died alone and desolate, buried under heavy snow. When Theodore Shaw heard of my death, he spent the entire night climbing over walls to steal my body from the grave. I was already a ghost by then, completely terrified by what I witnessed. Theodore, a high-ranking ministry secretary of such noble status, yet here he was in the dead of night, scaling walls to steal my corpse. He took me back and buried me beneath an old locust tree outside his study, then ordered workers to build a small pavilion to shelter me from wind and rain. He placed a tea table inside the pavilion. During his free time, he would sit there drinking tea and reading books. Unless he had to go out, he spent nearly the entire day in that pavilion. Occasionally he would speak a few words about daily life, his voice deep and low, as if he wanted to send a message to someone. Gradually, this great minister's life became as clear to me as the palm of my hand. I learned how he had climbed step by step to the pinnacle of power. I also knew that he cherished deep in his heart the image of someone he could never forget for his entire life. Because of that image, he had rejected 3 excellent marriage proposals. Yet throughout his life, he could never be by her side. Years passed swiftly, one after another. He achieved great success and fame, his good reputation spreading throughout the capital. Living in wealth and honor, he eventually retired from office and returned to his hometown to live in seclusion. Even I wasn't entirely clear whether it was me who had been accompanying Theodore all these years, or if Theodore had been keeping me company. I watched his long but lonely life's journey, from a handsome and talented young man to an elderly man of 80 with snow-white hair. Later, he fell gravely ill. Medicine and acupuncture could no longer help him, and he passed away in the western mountains. Before dying, he instructed his devoted students that after he was gone, they should bury him together with the person in that pavilion. Master Theodore Shaw lived a stormy life, never taking a wife or having children, but in return, he had many students to be proud of. All his students followed his final wish and buried him together with the nameless person, buried under that old locust tree. In front of the grave stood a stone tablet with Catherine carved on it. Catherine was my name. Miss. Someone was shaking me vigorously, making my head feel dizzy. I thought to myself, I'm already a dead ghost, so why do I still have these sensations? Miss, wake up quickly, something's happened. This voice sounded somewhat familiar. I frowned and opened my eyes wide. What met my gaze was a small, round face that was familiar yet somehow strange. Rose. I suddenly opened my eyes wide in excitement, grasping Rosa in tightly and crying, Rose. It's really Rose. Why? Sob. Wasn't Rose beaten to death when I was gravely ill because you tried to steal some hot porridge for me? How is it that after all these years, you still haven't been reborn? Miss, you've been sleeping so deeply you're talking nonsense. What are you babbling about? Miss, get up quickly, something big has happened. The master has returned, and he's brought back a young lady who's pregnant. Miss, Master Nathan has brought back a pregnant young lady. This scene seemed so familiar. Wasn't this the day Nathan returned from his trip to the south to repair the dikes? That year, when he returned, he also brought back Lisa. But how could this be? This was something that happened many years ago. Isn't Nathan dead? No, he's not dead yet, because Rose is still alive, and I'm looking at Rose's youthful, rosy face full of worry. A flash of surprise lit up in my heart. Could it be that I've been reborn? I stretched out my hand and fiercely pinched my thigh. It really hurts. This isn't a joke. I'm alive again. Haha, I'm actually alive again. Although returning to this point in time isn't necessarily advantageous, it doesn't matter. As long as I'm still alive, I'll walk the path ahead again myself. Miss, Rose knows you're heartbroken, but please don't be like this. The master probably just brought back a relative. Don't overthink it, don't scare Rose. My mumbling to myself must have seemed abnormal and frightened Rose. Rose, I'm fine, don't worry. I steadied my emotions and comforted Rose. In my heart, I began calculating and preparing. If I wanted to escape the tragic fate of my previous life, I would need to put on quite a performance. But first, I still thought of that person. In my previous life, he dug up my grave for me, brought me back to shelter me, and even avenged me. He was willing to remain alone his entire life without wife or children for my sake. I quickly wrote a letter and handed it to Rose. Rose, hurry and deliver this letter to Theodore. Rose took the order but hesitated, asking me, Miss, you want to send this letter to Theodore at Spring Breeze Garden. Why not send it through proper channels? This letter must be delivered directly into his hands. You must stay there and wait for him, wait for Theodore. Why must I wait? Rose's face showed confusion. In my previous life when I was gravely ill, Rose was beaten to death for trying to steal hot porridge for me. She had just turned 16 that year. In this life, I will protect Rose and give her peaceful days and a joyful life. That day in my previous life, when this incident happened, Rose was beaten because she spoke up for me in indignation and was slapped 10 times by old lady Chen. I haven't forgotten this, and my heart still aches thinking about it. I don't know if everything can be changed in this life, but first I must ensure Rose's safety. I didn't explain much, only instructed Rose. You must wait until you can personally deliver the letter to Theodore, then follow him. Remember, Rose's face was full of worry, but her nature was obedient, so she nodded. Yes, miss. Miss, please be careful. In the main courtyard of the Chen family there's old lady Chen, there's my damned husband, and there's that pregnant young lady Nathan Chen brought back. In the past, every time I came here, I would respectfully perform the proper greetings. Today I said nothing and sat down directly. When old lady Chen saw this, she became displeased, her eyes widening with an expression like she wanted to scold someone, but she held back. Nathan's mother used her eyes to stop the old lady. I knew that today, the three of them were still preparing to apologize to me, so no matter what I did, they would endure it. Husband, are you angry? Lisa. Lisa gently tugged at Nathan's sleeve. On her face with perfectly ordinary features was exactly the pitiful, wronged expression of the legendary manipulative woman. How dare you? I am the only bloodline of the Lane family. I have no siblings. Don't soil our family's reputation the moment you open your mouth. I looked toward her, just in time to see her pulling on Nathan's sleeve. She pretended to be frightened by me and quickly let go of his hand. Who is she trying to fool? I know all too well how vicious and cruel this scheming woman's heart is. Otherwise, how could she bear to beat a teenage maid to death? Madam. Nathan stepped forward 2 steps, looking at me and then at his concubine, appearing weak and troubled, not knowing how to arrange things properly. I was ordered by the court to go south, to repair the dikes. For half a year, Lisa has been taking care of me day and night, working so tirelessly that she became pregnant with my child, right? I smiled coldly and asked them in return. Their faces stiffened. I stood up and looked at the pair of dogs, man and woman. The Lane family has had 2 grand tutors, and my father was also a Hanlon scholar. We've always put propriety and righteousness first. From childhood to adulthood, I've never seen such worldly affairs. I haven't even stepped through such grand doors, yet you two have already gotten together privately. Such shameful behavior, if word gets out, you, as a 4th-rank ministry secretary, won't know how much the world will mock you. Hearing this, Nathan's face turned dark as he pushed Lisa aside. Should we just hide this matter for now? Nathan asked hesitantly. In my previous life, I remember when I was still heartbroken, he had already given me a preemptive strike, saying I should be grateful that Lisa had borne children for the Chen family, and that I should be content being a childless main wife, since Lisa was willing to be a peaceful concubine who wouldn't compete for my position as the legal wife. In this life, even if they gave me gold, I wouldn't be heartbroken over him, let alone give him the chance to strike first. I looked at him coldly. Hide it. Wait until she gives birth, then sell her. What? Lisa's face turned deathly pale, trembling all over. How can this be? Nathan angrily glared and shouted loudly, Madam, don't be so vicious. Catherine Lane, don't make trouble. Couldn't hold back either. Catherine Lane, don't be so malicious. At this time in my previous life, Rose indignantly spoke up for me and was slapped 10 times. My parents died early, and my grandparents also passed away 2 years ago. But my cousin is still a favored concubine in the palace and hasn't fallen from grace yet. The Chen family simply doesn't dare to really do anything to me. They can only curse and scold my servants to vent their anger. This time, I won't allow them to touch Rose. In this life, I will do my utmost to protect those around me. Who exactly is making trouble? I looked coldly at them all. One Nathan courted and wanted to marry me. He promised my grandfather that in this lifetime, he would never take concubines. Nathan, do you remember? Back then, you only passed the first level of the imperial examinations, then failed the palace examinations. Thanks to my grandfather and cousin pleading with His Majesty, you were given a position in the Ministry of War. Over these years, the Lane family has continuously looked after you. If not for that, how do you think you could have what you have today? The first level of examinations, the final palace examinations in front of the emperor. Old Lady Chen's face turned ashen, and Nathan hung his head in shame, accepting the help from others. You haven't repaid others' kindness, yet you want to repay kindness with resentment. You married into the Chen residence 3 years ago, but haven't even had a child, while Lisa is carrying the Chen family's bloodline. Giving her a small concubine position isn't too much, is it? Nathan, ashamed to the point of anger, questioned me. Seeing this, Lisa ran over to kneel before me, kowtowing and pleading, Sister, please don't blame the old lady and master. I don't need to be a concubine. Lisa doesn't seek status or position, only wishes to serve the master and old lady in the future, and to serve sister as well. In my previous life, I was heartbroken and questioned that Nathan. Why did he betray me? I would rather die than agree to let him take concubines into the residence. Lisa's heart was full of schemes, using retreat as advance, putting on such a weak and pitiful appearance. Nathan, in his anger, didn't want conflict but ended up driving me and Rose to Spring Breeze Garden. A main wife's position like mine became meaningless in name only. Lisa gave birth to a son and, with the status of the child's mother, secretly controlled and continuously cut my silver and supplies. I came from a prestigious family, noble and proud from birth, with pride deeply embedded in my bones. I refused to compromise and wouldn't bow down or kneel before her. I took out a handkerchief to wipe the place where Lisa had just touched while kneeling, then threw the handkerchief far away, my face showing complete disgust and contempt. I'm afraid you'll dirty the path ahead of me. Lisa was stunned. Nathan's face darkened with anger. Lisa, get up. There's no need to plead with her. I smiled and said, the law has decreed that if a husband wants to take concubines, he must have the consent of his legal wife. Hearing this, Nathan became even angrier and shouted, the law also states that if a wife doesn't understand propriety and is jealous, she can be divorced. Then you divorce me. Everyone was stunned. Old Lady Chen panicked. Divorce? What divorce? Marriage is a major life event. You can't just divorce someone. She immediately winked at Nathan. How could Nathan divorce me? My cousin was still the emperor's favored concubine. Nathan's future would be dim without me. Nathan had climbed onto a tiger's back. He wanted to get down but was afraid of losing face. He looked at me hesitantly, unable to say a word. Seeing this, Lisa knelt down again to plead with Nathan. Master, I beg you not to divorce sister because of me. If sister can't bear children to continue the family line, it's natural for her to be jealous. That's understandable. Oh, is this person using proper language? Nathan hesitantly looked at me, still waiting for me to feel sorry for him, waiting for me to give him a way out through my compromise and pleading. Keep dreaming. This pit was dug by my own hands for him to jump into. Don't even think about finding a way out. I took out a small dagger from my sleeve, smiled coldly at Lisa and said, "If we don't divorce, what then?" I still remember my husband once promised that if one day he betrayed me, either we would divorce, or I would use this dagger to skin alive the woman who seduced him. Lisa looked up, and when her eyes met the gleaming blade in my hand, her face immediately changed color. Nathan looked toward Lisa, then hesitantly looked at me. "Madam, are you really so heartless?" Heartless? In my previous life, it was precisely because I wasn't heartless enough that I and Rose lived worse than death. One was beaten to death. One was starved to death. I am the sole descendant of the Grand Tutor's residence, with the most prestigious family background in the capital. Yet I let myself fall into such desperate circumstances. Every time I think about it, I hate that I can't beat myself 3 times. This dagger of mine was bestowed by His Majesty. This object represents his command. I didn't bother to pay attention to Nathan, playing with the dagger while staring fixedly at Tinuingsa, continuing. "Where should I place this dagger? Should I draw some flowers on your face, or deliver a fatal blow? Master, save me. Save me." Hearing this, Lisa's legs went weak, and she tremblingly crawled over to seek Nathan's help. "Master, quickly save me and the child in my belly. Just a little scare and you're already afraid." Nathan saw he couldn't persuade me and angrily shouted, "Catherine, are you forcing me to write a divorce letter for you before you'll be satisfied? Am I forcing you? What am I forcing you to do? Did I force you to have an affair with Lisa? Or did I force you to break your promise and repay kindness with resentment?" I narrowed my eyes and asked, "Could it be that I forced you to stick your head into a cesspit and you'd do it? You shameless, vulgar thing." Old Lady Chen trembled with anger and scolded, "That's right, you all are virtuous people. You're not shameless, so you can betray kindness, bring in a woman of unclear origins as a concubine to destroy the wife. You shut up." Nathan pointed at me and roared, "Catherine, you yourself are a barren tree that bears no fruit, failing to fulfill your duty to help the Chen family continue its lineage, and you don't cultivate your mind and character, harboring jealousy. If you absolutely refuse to accept Lisa, then I'll divorce you. You divorce me then. Once I leave the Chen family. Who would want a woman with a heart as vicious as yours?" Nathan couldn't hold back anymore and pointed straight at me, roaring. I nodded. Right. You have a pure heart and good character. Since you have good character, write the divorce letter immediately. Today, if you don't dare divorce me, then you're a dog, not a real man. Someone bring paper and ink. Nathan was so angry his face turned purple, gasping heavily as he began writing the divorce letter. He was so angry he had lost all remaining rationality. He forgot that when a wife is divorced and leaves the house, she gets to take all her dowry with her when she married into the residence. And I, as the sole granddaughter of the Grand Tutor's residence, had an enormous dowry when I married. I had worked hard to dig this pit, and Nathan stupidly fell for the trick, immediately jumping down to write the divorce letter. After finishing the divorce letter, he threw it to me. Just as I caught the divorce letter, Theodore also led people running over. Miss Catherine. Still that gentle voice that I had carved deep into my memory. Ah, I can really hear it. I turned around and looked up at him, Theodore Shaw. The young man wore a purple official robe, his entire being like jade with a calm temperament. Theodore glanced at me and said, Miss Catherine, your servant came to report that you were divorced by your husband and are in difficult circumstances, needing help. Noble concubine Diana also entrusted me to take extra care of Miss Catherine. Today, what does Miss Catherine need me to help with? Just say it, and I will absolutely not refuse. I smiled and nodded. This time I'm troubling Theodore. You all. Nathan's confused mind gradually sobered up, but it was too late. The law clearly states that when a legal wife is divorced, she may take all her dowry when leaving, including the servants and maids who came with her to the residence. Theodore looked at everyone and said, Miss Catherine must carefully inventory everything. Not even a penny can be left behind, lest noble concubine Diana become angry and blame us, which we cannot bear. Theodore spoke gently and peacefully, not mentioning the Chen family by name, but it was clearly like the Chen family hard in the face. When we were inventorying the dowry, Nathan stepped forward hesitantly, wanting to speak but stopping. Because Theodore didn't give any opportunity to open his mouth, I heard that Nathan brought back a romantic woman, and before even crossing the threshold or performing the concubine ceremony, she's already pregnant. You should handle this matter well, lest it reach His Majesty's ears. Ah, Nathan, you should be careful and handle this properly. Nathan swallowed all the words he wanted to say. This performance of mine was a bit rushed, but fortunately Rose adapted quickly. She was now busily arranging for servants. This, and this too, take them all. This jade flower vase belongs to our family, take everything. Old Lady Chen, Nathan, and Lisa could only stand aside in frustration, watching us clean out all the dowry, their faces full of regret but unable to do anything about it. This feeling was incredibly refreshing. Theodore rode his horse slowly alongside my carriage, asking, Miss Catherine, do you want to return to the Grand Tutor's residence? That's probably not possible. I lifted the carriage curtains slightly to steal a glance at his handsome profile. I'm just a weak woman after all. This time I've probably offended the Chen family. I plan to go to Spring Breeze Garden to avoid them for a while. I'll probably be troubling Theodore quite a bit in the coming days. Spring Breeze Garden was previously my mother's dowry property. Later, when I married, it was given to me. That's excellent then. Theodore turned his head and our eyes suddenly met. He quickly looked away, his earlobes gradually turning red. Being able to help Miss Catherine is my honor. I smiled softly without refusing. Thank you, Theodore. At Spring Breeze Garden, the two maids Ruby and Peach were currently cleaning and tidying up everything. Both were servants I had bought when I was still at the Chen residence. In my previous life, after I died, that Lisa found excuses to sell them both. In this life, I brought both of them with me when I left the residence, and I increased their monthly wages by several portions. The two were moved. Thank you, miss. Thank you, miss. From now on, we will serve you wholeheartedly and are willing to repay this kindness with our whole hearts. All right, you two may withdraw. Call Rose here to attend to me. Yes, miss. I locked the dowry in the secret storeroom. Only Rose and I knew the secret code for the lock. That night, Theodore sent 2 more guards to watch over Spring Breeze Garden from outside, and he also invited me to the Shaw residence for dinner, using the excuse of building neighborly relationships. My heart couldn't help but feel stirred, thinking of my previous life. At this time, I didn't know I was suffering in confused agony. My mind was like being covered by fog. I had never let Theodore into my sight, not even for a second. Miss. Rose saw that I hadn't spoken for a long time and called out a few times. Today the Shaw family is hosting a banquet. Do you want to attend? Of course I'll attend. I perked up and sat down at the dressing table to prepare, looking back at the woman in the mirror with cloud-like hair and jade-like eyebrows, beautiful as a blooming peach blossom. Rose helped me style my hair. Yes, miss. Rose skillfully styled my hair, then opened the jewelry box on the table and asked, Miss, which hairpin would you like to use? This jewelry box of mine had many layers, one after another, with all kinds of hairpins and ornate jewelry. At the bottom of the jewelry box, I took out a jade hairpin in green that I had never used before. In my previous life, after I died, Theodore climbed walls and dug graves all night, stealing my body and bringing it back while it was still warm. At the end of that year, he presented evidence to the throne accusing Nathan of treason and collaborating with enemies. Before being beheaded, Nathan angrily glared and asked Theodore, Theodore, what grudge do I have with you that you must push me down this path? You deserve to die. A traitor who harms the people, Dying 10,000 times still wouldn't pay for your crimes. That day when he returned to the residence, he still sat in the pavilion by my grave, pouring a cup of daughter's red wine. Today I took Nathan's head for you. Are you happy? Very happy, I answered. My heart was filled with joy beyond measure. I was grateful to Theodore for avenging me and washing away my grievances. It's just a pity that yin and yang are separated, and we cannot communicate. Theodore never heard me thank him that year. Nathan's clan was exterminated to the 9th degree that year, and their family property was confiscated. Ministry Secretary Theodore rarely humbled himself to ask colleagues. He requested Assistant Minister Lewis from the Revenue Ministry, who was responsible for inventory and storage, to help find a jade hairpin in green. When asked why he was looking for this hairpin, Theodore only said indifferently, "It belonged to an old friend." I handed the hairpin to Rose to put in my hair. "Theodore, Miss Catherine has arrived." I followed the maid's guidance to a small pavilion outside for dinner. When Theodore saw me, he immediately stood up to greet me. Sure enough, when his eyes saw the jade hairpin I was wearing, he was stunned. "This jade hairpin? Theodore, don't you remember clearly? This jade hairpin was given to me by you several years ago." He said it belonged to an old friend. In truth, it was an object returning to its original owner. When I was 13 years old, 5 years ago, shortly after Theodore won the top scholar title, he brought this hairpin as a gift to me. At that time, I was half believing and half doubting when I asked her, "I'm not close with you, young master. Why are you giving me this jade hairpin, Miss Catherine? Have you forgotten? A few months ago, Miss Catherine helped a scholar who had been robbed of all his money and was driven out by his landlord. You gave him 2 taels. This jade hairpin is worth exactly 2 taels, just consider it repayment." I had never seen her wear it before. In my previous life, when I met Theodore again, I was already engaged to Nathan. At that time, I was devoted to Nathan and couldn't see the regret hidden deep in Theodore's eyes. Because Theodore and I weren't close, I was a bit shy. I lowered my eyes slightly and smiled softly. In the future, if Theodore pays attention, you'll see that I actually like this jade hairpin very much. Theodore was stunned for a while after hearing these words, then stared at me intently. The attendant beside him quietly reminded, "Master, please invite Miss Catherine to sit. Miss Catherine, please sit, please sit." He cleared his throat twice to regain his composed demeanor. The two of us sat facing each other. It must be that Tin's wind is rather strong, making Theodore's face slightly red. In the palace, His Majesty goes to court at dawn every morning. Court officials usually need to be in position properly before dawn. The next morning at daybreak, I had already gotten up to prepare, arranging my clothes again, and had Peach go invite Theodore to Spring Breeze Garden for breakfast. The reason was to thank my neighbor for mutual help. Theodore didn't refuse and very quickly appeared at Spring Breeze Garden to have breakfast with me. While eating, I suddenly asked, "Today I want to enter the palace to visit my cousin. I wonder if Theodore could conveniently give me a ride. I just moved to Spring Breeze Garden yesterday and haven't had time to buy a carriage yet." "Of course I can. Miss Catherine needn't be so polite." The early morning breeze was fresh and cool, with morning sunlight dancing on each leaf. Theodore and I sat in the carriage together, momentarily looking at each other without knowing what to say. Occasionally I would look up and see that handsome profile, and couldn't help but sigh inwardly. "Theodore." He looked toward me. I smiled gently and made conversation. "Theodore is talented with a far-reaching reputation and high noble status. There must be many people who admire you. Why hasn't Theodore married yet?" Theodore looked at me with deep eyes that also carried some patience. "I only want to marry the person I love in this lifetime. If it's not her, then I won't marry." I nodded and maintained a calm demeanor. "Hearing you say this, there must already be someone in your heart." He looked at me with eyes bright as stars. "That's right." At Moon Palace, noble concubine Ayanna Hayes lay lazily on a couch, languidly looking up at me. "Have you thought it through?" I decisively nodded, "Yes." "Cousin, sit up properly." She gently put down the fan in her hand and smiled. Ministry Secretary Theodore said I instructed him to take extra care of my younger cousin. How is that? I nodded and smiled. Cousin, how could I not know? Cousin, I also want to tell you something. Noble concubine looked at me suspiciously, but still waved for all the attendants to withdraw, then intimately pulled me to sit beside her. What does my cousin want to say that's so mysterious? Is it urgent? I sat down and leaned close to her ear. Cousin, let me tell you about a dream I had last night where I saw our maternal great-grandmother. Stories of death and rebirth, past and future lives, and reincarnation are inherently mysterious loops. To avoid frightening her, I could only cleverly find a way to tell the story. Oh. Cousin slightly raised her crescent-shaped eyebrows and looked at me with a confused expression. Diana and I share the same maternal great-grandmother, because my mother and her mother were blood sisters. Catherine, don't tease me. Cousin smiled softly. I continued seriously, then cousin, listen to what I say next to know if it's true or false. All right, you continue. Isn't it true that the Empress has always treated you very well? Cousin smiled faintly. The Empress and I have always lived in harmony. When you were granted the title of noble concubine, didn't the Empress reward you with a sachet embroidered with plum blossoms? Indeed. Cousin's expression changed as she sat up straight and asked quietly, I've never told anyone about this. How do you know? I looked down at the sachet that cousin was carrying. Cousin, didn't the Empress also tell you that His Majesty particularly likes the scent of saffron flowers? In the blink of an eye, cousin's expression became grave. Did our great-grandmother appear in your dream? I didn't answer, but said, this sachet contains a type of evil medicine that makes it difficult for women to become pregnant. Hearing this, cousin's face became even more ashen. I sighed and grasped her hand. The deep palace is treacherous and people's hearts are hard to fathom. Cousin needs to be more careful. After a long while, cousin finally regained her composure, looked at me and said softly, It's been a long time since I've seen Grace. Next time you enter the palace, bring her into the palace to play. I miss Grace a bit. Yes, cousin knows. Grace is actually my adoptive sister, taken in by my mother. In truth, she's the private female physician of the Hayes family. Noble concubine originally wanted to keep me for lunch, but I politely declined because I had promised Theodore to accompany him when court was dismissed and leave the palace together. Cousin smiled and saw me off to the front of Moon Palace. That Nathan isn't a good person either. Don't be nostalgic about him. Our dynasty isn't harsh about women remarrying. In the future, if you have someone you fancy, I'll petition His Majesty for you. Thank you, Your Majesty. I bowed to noble concubine Diana. Leaving Moon Palace, I immediately saw Theodore waiting for me. Did you meet with noble concubine Diana? Yes. I nodded. Theodore and I walked side by side, but for a long time neither of us spoke. I had to ask softly, doesn't Theodore want to ask what I discussed with Her Majesty? Sisters chatting and confiding in each other. If I wanted to listen, that wouldn't be very appropriate. Ah, what a waste of my effort. I wanted him to hear it even more. Her Majesty instructed me that nowadays women remarrying isn't taboo anymore. In the future, if I have someone I fancy, she'll petition for me. Theodore looked at me solemnly. Noble concubine Diana treats Miss Catherine Lane very well. Very quickly that afternoon, news spread that Ministry Secretary Nathan Chen had brought back an outside woman as a favored concubine, destroying his wife, and had written a divorce letter for his legal wife. Of course, rumors about me and Ministry Secretary Theodore having an affair also spread. Nathan, wanting to focus all attention on me and Theodore, petitioned His Majesty accusing Theodore of seducing me and inciting me to divorce him. Unfortunately, I had gone ahead of him by one step to meet with noble concubine Diana. My cousin, besides her ability to sit in the position of noble concubine in the turbulent harem of the current emperor, also had the status of being the daughter of the minister's family, a prestigious clan. Her mind must certainly be more astute and quick than most. She had already paved the way for me. Haha. So Nathan not only failed in his accusation, but was also reprimanded by His Majesty for being heartless and ungrateful, favoring concubines and destroying his wife. He was directly demoted 2 ranks from 4th rank to 6th rank, and his salary was suspended for 3 years. How refreshing. Haha. I sat swinging happily on the swing that Theodore had just made for me. He tried to steal a chicken but lost the rice instead. Well deserved. Nathan. Theodore watched me enjoying myself from behind, gently pushing the swing. However, there's still another rumor. What rumor? I asked suspiciously. There's a rumor that Nathan's favoring a concubine and destroying his wife has nothing to do with Theodore, but that Theodore truly has feelings for Miss Catherine. Oh, I raised my head to look at him. Our eyes met and Theodore shyly pushed me again, making me unable to see his expression clearly. I only heard him say slowly, His Majesty ordered me to investigate and find the truth about who spread this rumor. Why don't you investigate? Why not? Because I myself spread this rumor. What? I pressed my toes to the ground to stop the swing, shocked as I turned to look at him. Then are you planning to confess? Confess? What crime is there to confess? Miss Catherine, do you understand what I mean? This is a marriage proposal, isn't it? My heart was in chaos. Although in my previous life I spent every day with him, and when I was reborn I deliberately tried to change our fate, I had secretly thought about remarrying many times. But why was my heart in such turmoil now? Theodore looked at me with bright, burning eyes. From the first time we met, your image has remained in my heart forever. Catherine, now we are both unmarried. If you're willing to marry me, I swear that in this lifetime there will only be you, and I will never betray you. Heart, stop beating so hard. Miss. Rose stretched out her hand and gently pushed me. I looked up in a daze and saw this little one smiling happily. Miss. Just now Rose heard from behind. What did you hear? Rose coughed lightly twice and said first, If you're willing to marry me, I swear that in this lifetime. Stop. Rose giggled and said, Every time Theodore looks at Miss, his eyes are different from normal. Miss, why don't you accept Theodore's proposal? Isn't Theodore talented and accomplished? He was top scholar at a young age, now holds the position of ministry secretary, handsome and dignified, and has cherished Miss for many years. So good, really good. In every way better than Nathan. When did I say I wouldn't accept? I looked at Rose and asked back. Miss, didn't you say that? Did I say that? Miss, then you agree to marry Theodore. I only told Theodore that if he wanted to propose marriage to me, he should bring elders and a matchmaker to the door. I just wanted to teach Theodore some proper etiquette. Theodore had business and had to leave the capital for a trip. Nathan, having been reprimanded and fined by His Majesty, made his mother harbor even more resentment toward me. Previously, when old Lady Chen could still rely on the reputation of the Grand Tutor's residence and noble concubine Diana in the palace, she had made quite a few connections with ladies from powerful families. Now she went all around the capital speaking ill of me, that Catherine is unfilial, uneducated, and vulgar beyond endurance. Catherine has a vicious heart. She herself is a barren tree that can't bear fruit, yet she has such jealous hatred that she nearly killed my precious granddaughter-in-law. Catherine, taking advantage of my son being away from the capital, came to Spring Breeze Garden to do shameful things. And everyone knew who lived near Spring Breeze Garden. When Rose learned of this through gathering information, she was angry for several days and couldn't even eat properly. But I was different. I remained cheerful every day, eating well and sleeping soundly, getting Nathan to write a divorce letter for me, causing Nathan to be demoted and fined, were all part of my plan. The real fun was still to come. Haha. Miss, Theodore hasn't been seen for several days. Where did he go? I shook my head and shrugged, munching on sunflower seeds. He asked me to wait for him. I cracked another handful of sunflower seeds and patted the chair beside me, pulling Rose to sit down. Come here and crack sunflower seeds with me. Rose pouted angrily and stamped her feet. Miss, just keep cracking. Rose will go door to door to explain and clear Mrs. name. What's the rush? There's plenty of time. I firmly pulled Rose down to sit and crack sunflower seeds with me. Don't worry. Your miss here is only used to eating meat and fish and living comfortably. I'm not used to suffering. Half a month later, Theodore returned to the capital. He immediately hired Mrs. Watson, the most famous matchmaker in the capital, and brought along his adoptive mother to Spring Breeze Garden to propose marriage to me. This adoptive mother had previously been a neighbor of the Shaw family. When Theodore's parents died early, it was thanks to this lady's care and attention that he could focus on his studies with peace of mind. When he came to the capital to take the examinations, the four tales were also borrowed from his adoptive mother, which led to his later success. I remember that every festival, he would send silver and expensive gifts back to the adoptive family in his hometown. I only taught Theodore the proper etiquette for marriage proposals, but I left him to handle how to proceed. Mrs. Watson was indeed the most famous matchmaker in the capital, but she was also the biggest gossip in the capital. Theodore is young and talented, passing the top scholar examination at a young age, and now holding the position of ministry secretary. Handsome and dignified with a steady temperament, his good reputation spreads far and wide. He's currently the dream man of countless young ladies in the capital. Theodore has long held Miss Catherine in his heart. The two of you are a match made in heaven. Miss Catherine, do you agree to marry Theodore? No. I smiled and shook my head. Theodore's eyes dimmed. I looked at him without any panic and said, Theodore is like jade, like the bright moon with a gentle breeze and fame throughout the world. As for me, although I come from a prestigious family with an illustrious background, my parents have both passed away, and I've been married once before, and cannot bear children. Remarrying like this would be unfair to Theodore. Mrs. Watson was stunned. Theodore looked at me with eyes like a burning flame. Miss Catherine, you're too modest. 5 years ago, thanks to Mrs. Help, I was able to pass the top scholar examination. From the moment I saw you, I was moved. Meeting again, I could never forget. When you married, I blamed myself countless times and could only stand far away to wish you well. Later, when that despicable Nathan wrote a divorce letter for you, to be honest, my heart was as happy as spring's return. I admire you even more for not forcing emotions, bravely seeking your own happiness. I also don't care much about children. I cherish Miss Catherine for who you are. Being able to accompany you for the rest of my life would fulfill my life's wish. I ask for nothing more. As long as you have me in your eyes, I swear to love you the same throughout life, before and after. Theodore spoke in one breath without stopping, his sincere emotions flowing forth as he expressed his feelings to me. Mrs. Watson couldn't say anything, just nodded repeatedly. Right. Catherine is truly blessed to be so carefully treasured by Theodore. Very well, then I can only trouble Theodore for a lifetime. I smiled and said, Good, very good. Mrs. Watson excitedly waved her hand. The next morning, Theodore immediately entered the palace to request His Majesty's permission for the marriage. His Majesty had long favored Theodore and, because I was the cousin of his beloved concubine, quickly issued an imperial edict. Thanks to Mrs. Watson, the entire capital knew about Theodore's touching, heaven-moving deep affection. Everyone knew how sincerely Theodore had proposed to me, how I had initially rejected him, but how he persisted in expressing his feelings and finally moved me to agree to marry him. Mrs. Watson truly lived up to her reputation as the biggest gossip. I heard that even Nathan's mother, upon hearing this news, couldn't help but scream, Impossible. This cannot be. That Nathan, when he heard this news, also couldn't restrain himself from venting his anger to outsiders. Catherine is just a foolish woman. Does she really believe that a man will have only one woman for his entire life? Moreover, she can't even bear children. How ridiculous. But the one being laughed at wasn't me and Theodore. That Nathan, the woman he didn't cherish, is now treasured like a precious jewel by Theodore. He keeps mocking others frantically. This is exactly the legendary having it but not keeping it. losing it and crying situation. Hearing Nathan go around the capital, telling everyone that Catherine Lane can't have children, while Theodore, pure as jade, knowing this still wholeheartedly proposes marriage. How precious. Why does Nathan sound 9 parts sour? I'd be sour too. Although going away to repair dikes and feeling lonely, he let Lisa climb into his bed, but no one is foolish enough to actually write a divorce letter and throw out his legal wife. What man doesn't like novelty? But being foolish enough to lose his wife, only he would do that. Back then, without the Lane family, what would Nathan have today? Hinf, ungrateful. Bringing in a woman of unclear origins, a concubine, to destroy his wife, evil husband. You shut up. This time I supported being with Theodore. In the 3rd month of spring, with bright skies and white clouds, the scenery was beautiful. It was a perfect day for a wedding. Theodore, dressed in wedding attire, looked handsome and radiant, preparing an 8-person bridal sedan with 10 of red decorations to welcome me into his household. I returned to the Grand Tutor's residence to change into the Phoenix crown and rosy veil. The entire residence was decorated magnificently and luxuriously, 10 times more grand than when I married Nathan. First bow to heaven and earth, second bow to the high hall, husband and wife bow to each other, escort to the bridal chamber. In the bridal chamber, red dates, longan, peanuts, and melon seeds were placed on the bed, symbolizing perfect happiness and hoping for children and grandchildren to fill the family. A happy family, mutual love between bride and groom, lifelong happiness, and everything going as wished. After the wedding attendant finished her congratulations and handed a scale to Theodore, she withdrew. The groom took the scale to lift the veil, symbolizing a satisfactory marriage. Theodore and I drank the nuptial wine under the dancing candlelight. Both happy. He was happy to finally see the moon after the clouds parted, and I was happy to be able to continue the destiny from our previous life. The curtains fell. The spring breeze gently caressed. Bridal chamber with flowers and candles, meeting the lady. The next morning, after I washed and prepared myself, as soon as I stepped out of the room, I saw all the attendants and servants of the Shaw residence standing in 2 rows, waiting to pay their respects to me. Since I had no mother-in-law above me, I was the sole mistress of the residence. My heart was at ease, but suddenly encountering this scene, I glanced at the person beside me. "Madam, come here." Theodore embraced me and walked toward the main hall. "Here." He took out a small box and handed it to me. "This is the family wealth I've accumulated over these years. Now I'm handing it all over to you." Theodore also took out a pile of documents. "These are our house deeds, land deeds. We have more than 10 properties total. Besides this main residence, there's 1 place in our hometown, and we also have a in the capital. Additionally, there are 6 shops doing business in the city, plus silver and banknotes." All right. I quickly reached out to cover his mouth. "Don't you know that wealth shouldn't be revealed? And here you are announcing it to everyone." He smiled and said, "I'm handing everything over to you. You should take it all." "Of course. Now I'm the mistress of the Shaw residence, so naturally I must take this portion. What's mine is yours, and I'll take your life too." Theodore smiled softly and floated, "Thank you, madam." Everyone around us quietly laughed. Theodore stood up again and announced loudly for all of the Shaw household to hear clearly, "From now on, all matters in the residence will follow madam's orders. Is that clear?" "Yes, we all follow madam. From now on, madam's position in this residence is the highest." "Is that clear? Madam is number 1. "Yes." I laughed happily and called Rose over. "Rose, take out the money to give to everyone. Everyone can rest assured, madam is the kindest person. In the future, everyone should work hard to serve madam well. Madam will definitely not treat anyone poorly. Today everyone gets 5 taels as congratulatory money. Consider it the whole family celebrating together." "Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam." Wishing the master and madam an early birth of a precious son. I smiled. "Thank you all for your blessings. Everyone return to your duties. Husband, let's go offer tea to Aunt Mary." I looked at Theodore. Her kindness to you makes me truly happy. Thank you, Catherine. Theodore looked at me with tender eyes. Don't be so formal. She's been truly good to me. Since I married you, being filial to Aunt Mary is only natural. Let's go offer tea to Aunt Mary together. Theodore's adoptive mother, Aunt Mary, was an elderly lady who had lived frugally her entire life and had an excellent temperament. She took out 2 sachets she had embroidered herself along with some money, giving them to Theodore and me. This is a small token of my affection. You children take it. Thank you, Aunt Mary. Rose stepped forward carrying a small sandalwood box. Aunt Mary, this is a pair of jade bracelets that my mother gave me during her lifetime. Your kindness to my husband is as high as mountains. Today, I respectfully present these to you. I took out the jade bracelets and offered them to Aunt Mary. These are too precious, absolutely not. She refused in every way possible. Finally, it was Theodore who persuaded her to accept them. That year, Aunt Mary was just a young widow with only one beloved daughter. Later, she was unfortunately deceived by an unfilial son-in-law, so Theodore wanted to keep her here for us to care for her morning and evening. I also personally reassured Aunt Mary to put her mind at ease staying at the Shaw residence. Catherine, a small girl with her hair in braids, as black as ink, appeared at first glance. She looked like a young boy looking for the Shaw residence. Grace. I happily ran over and hugged Grace. I haven't seen you in so long. Grace nodded. I was traveling around the 4 corners of the world. When you sent someone with an invitation to the residence, I returned. Grace was a free female physician who liked to travel everywhere helping common people cure illnesses. After my rebirth, because I wanted to help my cousin change her fate, I had sent people to find Grace and bring her back to the capital. In my previous life, at this time I hadn't met Grace again. It wasn't until after I died that Grace returned. When she learned what had happened, she angrily ran to the Chen residence and crippled one of Nathan's legs. She nearly was taken away by the authorities, but fortunately Theodore stood up to help her. I pulled Grace into the house and told her about my cousin's situation. After hearing the whole story, Grace smiled easily. That evil medicine is indeed somewhat dangerous. Don't worry, with me here, noble concubine Diana can recover after some treatment and will definitely be able to carry a dragon hair. Hearing this, I was overjoyed beyond measure. Really? That's wonderful. In my previous life, when my cousin learned that the Empress had harmed her so she couldn't bear children, she became so angry she went mad. The sachet was also stolen, so there was no evidence left to accuse the Empress. For falsely accusing the Empress, my cousin was demoted from noble concubine, gradually lost favor, and one night she burned herself in her quarters. It was Theodore, who by then had become Prime Minister, who found sufficient evidence to prove that my cousin hadn't committed suicide, but had been murdered by Empress Wang, who then set fire to create a fake suicide scene. This time, I hope my rebirth can turn around my cousin's fate and add some flowers to her path ahead. Did you come specifically to tell me this good news? Grace smiled and shook her head. I came because of you. Grace nodded and began taking my pulse. Your illness is also hard to discuss. The imperial physicians are men, but among all the female physicians in the world, there aren't many. Female physicians with high medical skills are even rarer. That's why Grace has spent years specifically researching various difficult to discuss illnesses of women. Catherine, you're not unable to have children. Really? Grace said my body was normal, at most just a bit cold. With rest and proper care, there would be no problem. When I was young, I lowered my voice to tell her that every time I had my monthly period, I would go swimming in cold water. Later, when my mother found out, she forbade me from doing such foolish things. I blushed. Grace burst into laughter. You were young and didn't understand. Don't worry with me here. After examining me, she extended a finger. I'll cure your illness. The medical consultation fee is just 1,000 taels for one treatment. I widened my eyes. Are you robbing people? I'm helping the common people. Robbing my money, does that count as breaking the law? Well, Theodore, when he learned of this, was extremely excited and offered 1,000 taels to Grace. He also said that as long as I recovered, he would reward Grace with another 1,000 taels. What's this? A foolish rich person. Grace laughed. Theodore has lots of money and many admirers. Because of treating my illness, Grace temporarily stayed at the Shaw residence. Just as Grace had said, after more than a month, news of joy came from the palace. Noble concubine Diana was pregnant. His Majesty now had another heir. The Emperor's harem had more than 10 concubines, and His Majesty was nearly 40, but under his knee he only had 3 princes and 5 princesses. For the past 3 years, there had been no happy news. Now His Majesty was delighted, and on this beautiful spring day with flowers blooming everywhere, he ordered a banquet to entertain the ladies, inviting them into the palace to admire flowers and dispel boredom together with noble concubine Diana. Officials from 6th rank and above could have their female family heads attend the palace banquet together. Although Nathan had been demoted to 6th rank, he naturally had his name on the list to enter the palace. But this time only old Lady Chen entered the palace. Today, all the ladies should feel free to drink wine and chat to their heart's content, said noble concubine Diana, sitting above. I also entered the palace with Aunt Mary and Grace. I originally wanted to keep things peaceful for noble concubine Diana to be happy, so I basically didn't pay attention to old Lady Chen. The tree wants to be still, but the wind doesn't stop. Old Lady Chen took the initiative to provoke me.
The Chen family for so long. When trouble came, how could she avoid the fate of dying together with the Chen family? A few days later, Nathan had people beat Victor White half to death, then used money to sell both of them to the mining district where only slaves worked. But there was one thing I hadn't predicted. The shameless Nathan, after learning he had been deceived by Lisa and a scoundrel, was so shameless that he crawled to the Shaw residence crying and begging me to change my mind. Haha, I was dying of laughter. Before I could even see his shadow, I saw Theodore angrily grabbing a long staff and rushing out. I instructed, "Husband, please be patient. Don't beat him to death, at most break his arms and legs." All right, I'll listen to Madam. Later I followed to watch. Nathan, who had once been a ministry secretary, was no match for Theodore. He was beaten until he cried out in pain. Everyone gathered to watch the show. Theodore, holding the staff, pointed at him and said, "You worthless scoundrel. I won't say much, but my Shaw residence is not a garbage dump for people to come and make trouble. You better get far away from my wife and me. If I catch you once, I'll beat you once, I'll conveniently cripple your middle leg too." Theodore is really obedient. He really did only break Nathan's leg and then stopped. The reason was that he had shameless intentions to seduce a good family's woman. So the next day, Nathan entered the palace to accuse my husband of breaking his leg. His Majesty didn't bother to blame Theodore one bit, but instead scolded Nathan for his corrupt character, saying that reaching this point today was well deserved. He directly demoted his rank to 8th rank and gave him a tiny county magistrate position, banishing him to some remote corner. I still felt the punishment was too light. Fortunately, heaven still has eyes. I sent people to investigate and learned that Lisa couldn't endure the hardship in the mining district and was also tortured by Victor White. She died within less than a year. Victor White, who had intended to escape, was also beaten to death. 2 years later, 8th rank county magistrate Nathan looked down on national law. Thinking he was far from the capital, he acted recklessly, embezzling, plundering, illegally taking bribes, and even killing people to collect debts, deceiving and cheating, doing countless evil deeds that implicated his entire clan. Nathan was escorted back to the capital. Before being beheaded, he was paraded before the people for half a day. At noon, Nathan was beheaded at the market entrance to warn the people. He was beheaded on a winter day. There wasn't even anyone to collect his corpse. His head was covered by ice and snow. In my previous life, I also died on a cold, lonely winter day. At Moon Palace, 3 children were happily playing in the snow. I sat with noble concubine Diana, enjoying wine and sweet and sour glutinous rice balls. This was wine brewed by my cousin's own hands. Her skills were very high. "Young Master Theodore!" "Young Miss Theodore, 4th Prince. Don't run so fast." The palace maids and nannies were worried about the little ones falling. so they followed closely without leaving their sides. On the white snow were those small, adorable footprints. "Catherine, do you like it? Should I have the palace maids bring you another cup?" My cousin smiled and asked. I smiled and shook my head. Good wine should be savored. One cup creates lasting memories. I only hope that in the future, every year I can be healthy enough to enter the palace to visit you and taste the wine you personally brewed. That afternoon, after court was dismissed, Theodore came straight to Moon Palace to escort me and our children home. He and I held hands, each of us also leading an adorable little child. In this life, I won't let him cut off his family line. In this life, he won't let me be sad for even a moment. In this life, we'll grow old together with white hair, perfectly content. The night was already deep, with cold wind and snow still blowing endlessly. Theodore, dressed in purple robes, hid himself in the lonely night shadows. Theodore. Why did he come here? At this time, I was already a floating spirit, watching this ministry secretary Theodore, who had just returned to the capital climbing over walls, an extremely eerie scene. Then the scene before me became even more shocking. This ministry secretary Theodore actually spent the entire night digging up my grave and stealing my still, warm corpse. This person has special hobbies. Theodore brought me back and buried me under the old locust tree outside his study. 2 days later, he ordered people to build a pavilion to shelter me from wind and rain. On my grave, there was no tombstone, nor did anyone dare ask questions, because Theodore had just been promoted to ministry secretary. A few days later, Theodore hurriedly ran to the mass grave. It must be here. He pointed to a piece of green fabric that looked like a corner of a robe from the skeleton. His guard nodded, reporting to master. This jade pendant taken from that skeleton is indeed the jade pendant of young Lady Rose, who once served beside Mrs. Catherine. The servants of the Chen residence have confirmed this. That servant also confirmed that this maid was beaten to death by concubine, Lisa of Nathan that day. Outfit. Find a clean place to bury her properly. Yes. Theodore dug up graves and stole corpses for me, and now he was also taking the trouble to find Rose's remains to rebury her properly. This Theodore, I'm not close with him. At most we're just neighbors. What's his motive for doing this? My heart was full of suspicion. I continued to follow Theodore. When he was free, Theodore often sat under the locust tree beside my grave, sipping tea, reading books, writing poetry, and painting. As a top scholar who had achieved success and fame, the books he read weren't classics of sages, but were all folk tales and strange stories, like ancient novels. Theodore was frugal by nature and never wasteful, yet he was willing to spend a lot of money to buy spring jade tea. Under the old locust tree, he would drink tea and pour me a cup each time. I drank tea with him and read folk tales with him. It was surprisingly interesting in a strange way. Combined with the fragrant aroma of spring jade tea, it brought an extremely relaxing feeling. I also watched him write poetry and paint. Although he didn't write anything improper, it wasn't serious, profound work either. I didn't know who the young lady Theodore cherished in his heart was. Usually he looked like an upright gentleman, but when alone, his poetry and paintings were quite casual. As a ministry secretary who always worked for country and people, Theodore's paintings had no beautiful scenery of rivers and mountains. In his paintings, there was only me. In the painting, I had the long black hair of an unmarried maiden, holding a small candy while walking down the street, absorbed in eating with a messy face and smiling like a fool. As a ghost, I couldn't help but suspect that Theodore and I had some grudge I didn't know about. Then I saw him write a few casual lines on the painting. The beauty's smile is in my heart, whom does this distant feeling tell? This type of thing, even as a ghost, I find it shocking. In the second year after I died, he presented evidence to the throne accusing Nathan of treason and collaborating with enemies. Before being beheaded, Nathan angrily glared and asked Theodore, "Theodore, what grudge do I have with you that you must push me down this path? You deserve to die. A traitor who harms the people, dying 10,000 times, still wouldn't pay for your crimes." Nathan's clan was exterminated to 9th degree that year, and their family property was confiscated. Ministry Secretary Theodore rarely humbled himself to ask colleagues. He requested Assistant Minister Lewis from the Revenue Ministry, who was responsible for inventory and storage, to help find a jade hairpin in green. When Minister Lewis asked curiously, Theodore only replied indifferently, "It belonged to an old friend. I had almost forgotten." This was the jade hairpin he gave me when I was 13 years old, 5 years before this story began. Being young and foolish, I didn't know that men everywhere only give hairpins to the person in their heart. A devoted person like Theodore met a fool like me. I was the fool, he was the devoted one.